Welcome to the Flychain Reaction, a podcast designed to empower healthcare providers like you to master the business side of running a practice. Each episode sparks a chain reaction where actionable insights on financial management, operational efficiency, and growth strategies build upon each other, creating a powerful ripple effect to help your organization thrive. With Flychain's financial expertise and insights from industry leaders, we'll dive into everything you need to ignite success. Join us and let the Flychain reaction spark growth in your healthcare business.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Flychain Reaction. We really kind of pride ourselves with this whole format of bringing in experts, partners, vendors, consultants, operators to really share their story, their journey, and try and impart as much like wisdom, both maybe qualitative as well as tactical. And so really excited today to be joined by Ben Wessels. How's it going, Ben?
Good. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, just as a little background, we met like a few months back, and I think we share a mission in really wanting to help support, independent, small to medium sized ABA therapy providers with a lot of things like operational, obviously on your side of the fence, and then Flychain. But no, it was really cool, especially when we first started talking, kind of sharing your journey and where you are today, but really like where you started. And instead of me just describing like your resume, I would love maybe if you could just kind of tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself, where you got started, what you're up to today, and then we can really dig into some more, again, like tactical things. But would love, just to meet Ben.
Yeah. So, look, I have dedicated my career to this space. I fell into it, which I think is a story that a lot of folks recount to me when they're talking about how they got into ABA. And so, I was in my undergrad, getting a psych undergrad, and I was expressing to an advisor that I felt a little lost, like, okay, I'm taking theoretical courses. Yeah. How am I going to actually practically help anyone with this? And I got linked up with a BCBAD. This was in Chicago before Illinois passed an autism mandate.
And what's the time frame here, Ben?
So we're 2008.
Okay, cool.
And so about 18 years ago, and he was starting to do home-based ABA therapy.
Sure.
And I went and shadowed a session and immediately fell in love because, 2 hours with this child, 150 plus data points at the end of the session, clarity on what we're trying to accomplish. And as I came back to those sessions and started to work with that child, I saw weekly, monthly, 3 months, 6 months, exactly what was being accomplished. I understood that if I saw a flat trend line, we had a problem and we needed to adjust, and there was problem solving. And this really just clicked with me, the data component of it, the objectivity of it, the clarity in it. And so I fell in love. And so I started really running down this path. And later that year, Illinois passed their autism mandate. And so suddenly the guy who I was working for, who was, he was a professor, he was doing some therapy on the side, home-based, his phone started ringing off the hook. And he looked at me and said, "Hey, listen, I didn't get into this to run a business. I don't really know how to run a business. Here's the intake phone, figure this out." And so you're right, I'm 19, 20.
Yeah.
And I start taking calls from parents, most frequently mothers, and they're just crying on the phone saying, look, suddenly after years of fighting, Blue Cross or whoever will cover this technically, but there's nobody available to help. Nobody picks up the phone. There's no network. What do I do? And so I just caught the fire to say, look, I'm going to start hiring behavior techs, and anyone who shows themselves to be really solid and motivated, we're going to help them get into graduate school. And we're going to start just trying to home grow BCBAs, give them great jobs on the back end, and start making a difference here. And that really became a motivating factor for me. So fast forward a few years, other states are starting to pass autism mandates. We're taking some of our initial folks and we're saying, hey, why don't you move to Detroit? We know you have family there. They just passed an autism mandate. We want to be first movers. And so we did that across the map. At one point, we were across 16 states with a lot of folks who had just homegrown and moved and started building a community of providers in those areas.
Amazing, man. How was it running, one of these ABA therapy providers? And I always like to ask the question too, you were young, like, had a different background as well in terms of like running an actual business. If you could kind of like, knowing all the things you know now, tell your younger, more naive self, like any like things, if you could like, obviously go back in time and talk to your younger self, like what things would you want to tell them to say like, hey, watch out for this or do this? And it's really just a circuitous way of asking like, what mistakes did you make? Maybe
all of them. Look, I was right. I was young. I hadn't run a business before. And I think the thing that stands out to me is I would tell my younger self, get help, enlist the help of experts. I was just running at it. I had great people around me who I enjoyed working with, but none of us really knew. Wonderful clinicians, but from a business perspective, none of us really knew what we were doing. Yeah. And here it was new to everyone. I mean, I remember there was a time when there was technically no network for BCBAs in Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois. And so we would fax in a spreadsheet and we'd write the code 9999 on it or whatever. And then I'd immediately have to call and say, hey, I know this looks like fraud, but let me read you the autism mandate. And I promise this has to be covered and you have to pay for this, right? Like we had these bizarre experiences early days and, we had to fight and we had to push and everyone had to do that. But over the years after that, right, the industry started to professionalize. We're still on that path.
Yeah, for sure.
To change, but processes started to come about. Contracting, credentialing started to normalize. And I would tell my younger self, like, enlist help. There's a lot of really wonderful people out there. You don't have to do it all yourself. You don't necessarily have to hire a full-time person to do it. There's a lot of support out there. There's this entire industry now around supporting providers and doing excellent work so that they can focus on growing their business, or building their culture, developing their team, setting strategy, rather than, how do I get this contract or how do I get this denial to go through, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense too. And maybe that's like a question on the back of that. And I can, share some thoughts too, but like, how has this industry really changed since, that early days, 2008, 2009 to like where it is today? And one thing from our purview, and obviously Flychain falls into this camp, but it seems like in the last couple of years, while ABA is still a nascent industry relative to, perhaps other healthcare industries, in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of kind of amazing companies start out to kind of pick their different spots, whether that's like new EMRs, revenue cycle management, credentialing, at least, Flychain were the finance side and accounting, bookkeeping. But that was one big thing that I think like I didn't appreciate, especially not being, in ABA nearly as long as you have. But just in the last couple of years that, Flychain's been around, like we've just seen a bunch of really amazing companies that pop up and kind of all have their little like, expertise. And so, I know like that's something that at least, personally we've seen here, but we'd love to get your thoughts on like what's changed. And then also maybe like, where do you see things going? Like, what does the next maybe couple of years look like in this space? And I know that's probably a very loaded question and we don't have a crystal ball. But I'd be curious to get your thoughts too, as someone who's just been, in the trenches for the better part of 2 decades.
Yeah, so much has changed. I mean, this is not the industry that it was when I got in. And, a lot of that has been really positive.
Sure.
Some of it, I think, is things that, providers have to be aware of and planning for. I would say one of the really positive changes is options.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, you have technology providers, just every need that you might have and whatever's most important to you, you can find those folks. You can find, thinking of the Central Reaches, the Passages, the Alohas, all of these sort of EHRs, EMRs, like if you're really concerned about your billing and that's top, you've got the group that you need to go with. If you're concerned about scaling and eventually selling and being able to roll up into another group, you've got a really good option for that. If you want flexibility or customer service, you've got a group for that. And so you can really do your diligence instead of saying like, well, you better be on Central Reach. That's your only option. And like, I'm not here to tell you what you should go with.
Right.
I'm just saying practically, instead of it's like we have one option, there are a ton of options, and you can sort of decide, where do I want to go and what do I want to do? And I think Flychain is a great example of that too, right? Like when I first started, I wasn't even using QuickBooks. I was using Quicken. My CFO, when I've known him for 18 years, he's worked with me for 10 years, and he gives me the hardest time about what that looked like when he came, But then it was, QuickBooks or a local accountant. You didn't really have anyone who was specialized in the space that you could go to. And that is such a positive change. I think about consultants in the space. Now they're going through the whole life cycle, right? They've built a company, or they've built multiple companies. They've sold that company, or they still sit on the board of that company, but they've been through the whole process, and they can now pinpoint where you are and help you see the steps to get to the next spot.
Right. It's like now for almost the first time or maybe second time, like you've had people that have gone through it. Candidly, probably when it was like, the Wild West and there weren't options, but now you've got this like group of folks, consultants, vendors that have had like this treasure trove of experience and have either built solutions or know how to solve those problems when it's maybe like thinking about more like a consultant. One thing that like I just wanted to double back on because it was fascinating to hear, and I'd be curious to hear like how this maybe has changed. But you mentioned like the homegrown BCBA. And obviously like staff retention and is always a hot topic here, like shortage of, clinicians, generally speaking. Curious if like you're seeing successful business still do the kind of homegrown approach there, because, I think back then you said kind of putting them through grad school and things and really holding their hand, but it seems like maybe there's more like proper paths, like a more well-defined trajectory there. So I'd be curious, like how you're seeing that, but like what worked well there for you. And then for our other ABA providers that are maybe struggling to either keep talent or hire new talent, how did you like navigate that back in the day? But then also like, what are you seeing today for like those retention things? We see all sorts of stuff, like people setting up 401ks and things like that to try and, help kind of like retain that talent. But yeah, I'm curious there because I go to these conferences and you see a lot of like graduate programs that are, kind of like, hey, pitching to RBTs and folks that, want to take it up a level. So yeah, anything you can like share on that side, I think is just incredibly valuable because it's tends to be top of mind for everybody.
Yeah. And when I think about graduate students and those future BCBAs, I go back to options, right? So there's now so many programs you can go through, but more importantly than that, in my view, is options for supervision and getting your hours and getting really good training. I mean, the stats still are pretty crazy. I know a couple of years ago, it was 80% of BCBAs had less than 5 years of experience. And then if you talk to those folks, they'd also say, my first 2 years were brutal because I wasn't prepared to be a BCBA, not because my coursework wasn't good, but because I wasn't actually doing the work.
You weren't in the environment, doing the work, doing the blocking and tackling.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I see a lot of groups that we work with who they understand that they need to home grow BCBAs. If you're going to grow, not that you shouldn't hire outside BCBAs or anything. It's a dual approach, but they know that they need to have these folks, but they either don't have a plan or they don't have the person thinking about it because they're doing so many other things to actually prepare these future BCBAs to step into a role. And so the big miss is, and I did this, if I go back 10 years, at one point I had over 100 graduate students on staff.
Wow.
And we were just like, this is amazing. Look at all of these students. But if I'm being honest, we didn't have a good training program for them. And we also didn't have a pathway. We didn't know, okay, this person's testing in 9 months. What role in what clinic are they going to move into? And therefore, who's their mentor? Who's preparing them?
Yeah.
And then a year after they pass, what does that role look like for them? We did not have a good path for that. And what ends up happening is if you're training up way too many graduate students and you're not doing it well, those folks all end up leaving. And what you've done is take a ton of your BCBA's time to try to prep those people to not even have them be part of your organization going forward. And everybody's frustrated. And so have a plan. You might only need 2 graduate students on staff, right?
Sure.
That's okay as long as you're doing a really good job. You might need 50 on staff. That's okay as long as you're actually prepping them and you have a plan for them. That's what you need to do for their sake and for your own.
Yeah, I love that. It's like just making them feel like seen, heard, and respected. With like, hey, we have a place here for you today, but also we have a place here for you to the future. And like, this is what that path looks like. Should you want to go down it? Would you say? I think just to double click on that, like as you were running the business and scaling, I think there's a few different levers to pull to try and solve scaling challenges. Obviously, like systems and everything, making sure you're tracking stuff. That's, the Flychain plug yet again. But I think what I've seen among our, call it 200 customers or so is the folks that really spend the time to like invest in their employees and develop that culture, that it's not just like a treadmill of clinicians, that they treat them almost like as commodities rather than people and employees and part of the entire community. I'd be curious, like when you were scaling, especially early on, you said you didn't have a lot of those kind of systems in place. How important was it to try and really like understand the employees, their professional goals, develop mentorship programs, and, maybe prior to doing that and then implementing it, did you see like way better retention? And I'd ask that first. And then like, was there anything else that you were doing, maybe aside from like mentoring or like a cash bonus, that, was trying to really, make those employees feel seen and heard and want to stick around and grow with the organization?
Yeah, a culture is essential, and on 2 levels: local, the clinic, if they're clinic based, the clinic that they're working in, that culture within the clinic, but also corporate and visibility from leadership into right. Like if you're going to have clinics spread across a state or multiple states, knowing that your leadership is in those clinics, they're showing their face. But also virtually town halls, just updates on who are we, what are we about, let me bring you on and tell you where we're going. That type of openness and transparency, and then following through on the things that you say.
Of course, yeah. I think like there's that level of trust that really does need to be established. But I love what you said there too. It's like that top-down management, basically being like a present owner, right? And being there to really communicate like the vision, the updates, to make sure everyone's kind of on the same page.
We went through this really difficult learning process. So when we were just in Chicago, just in Chicago and Michigan, even, we were, maybe 100, just over 100 staff. I was hiring everyone. I knew everyone. I was going to events. I was very visible, and our retention was incredible. 15 to 18% turnover every year. Like really felt good about what we had going on. And we started adding more states. Growing. And I opened up clinics in India. I opened up clinics in Australia. I opened up clinics in Indonesia. Partner in Abu Dhabi. I own a coffee business in India. I
didn't know that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a passion project.
For sure.
Talk the whole time about that. And so what I did was I put in place an executive team. And felt like, well, that, they can replicate that. It'll be fine. And I underestimated the amount of cultural change that would create when you go from like dedicated founder, I know everybody, to executive team. They're getting to know everybody, and they're making, there's a different level of give that folks get when it's like, well, I know Ben, I've known him for 5 years. It's a different feel. Still owned the company, but I wasn't there. I was working on other things, and underestimated what it would take to sort of rebuild that trust, what the level of visibility needed to be on that team, what it would take to, while we're still growing like crazy, also maintain that culture. And went through a couple rough years on that, and then decided we're coming back to the basics. Take to run a successful ABA company beyond providing really quality care and
paramount.
It's relationships. So relationships with your staff, relationships with your parents, relationship to the child, and then relationship to your external stakeholders. So that's your payers, that's your vendors.
Yep.
Really being present and being mindful of those relationships. If you're doing well by all of those relationships, I feel strongly that your business will thrive.
Yeah, thrive and at the very least, I think be very resilient, right? If you check the boxes and are partnering with the right folks and also keeping a really close eye on like delegation. I think delegation is something that we see a lot of our customers struggle with because especially if they're the founder of that business, it's their baby, right? And they want to be involved in everything, but there gets a point, right, where you're maybe even still managing a caseload or what have you, but there always comes a point where like it's not sustainable anymore. And so, for those folks, Ben, like for the folks that maybe let's just pick an example, like, hey, you're now at like $1 million, $1.5 million in revenue a year, single location, but you want to expand and grow. What are some of the maybe things for those owners that are feeling pulled in every direction, but don't want to like maybe put their baby in someone else's hand for, the time being? To be honest, I have a lot of empathy. Like I'm the same way, right? We're growing Flychain and I love talking to every customer and getting involved, and that's not going to change. But there's other things that like I feel I need to offload, but don't feel comfortable about it. How did you like navigate that within the organization? Like, was it more meetings with people and spending more time to like really educate them as you're delegating something that maybe like wholly owned beforehand? Would love to understand that because I think like systems are great to scale, but these are all, we're people. Like these are people businesses through and through, right? Like all expenses payroll. You see patients, that's your customer. Just talk to us a little bit about that. I think it's just like will resonate with our audience.
Yeah, and I think the place I would start. So if you're that owner, and like you said, you're at about $1 million of revenue, you're one clinic, and you're thinking about expanding. I mean, the first question, like really honest conversation you have to have with yourself and with your leadership team is, what do we actually want?
Yeah,
because like there are things that come in the box. If you're doing $1 million of rev and you're collecting well, and you have an efficient team, you can have a really nice business, earn a really nice living, do really, really good work, and love the people you work with. Like that could be a really, really good outcome, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's this, as a founder, I get it. I get it with all of the businesses that I own or am invested in. Like there's this urge to grow and to scale and to take it to the next level.
I also feel like it's natural too, because there's such demand. And so you see like, oh, there's a huge opportunity out in front of me. So the market exists. It's how do you like get the business in a place that can actually like, take on that market without getting too over your skis, blowing up. So didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's exactly right. And so if you want, maybe your goal is, well, I want 3 clinics, right? And I think I can, when they're all full, I can be doing 5-6 million in those 3 clinics. That is my goal. Well, you have to be honest with yourself about what that means, because right now you might be cash flowing nicely and paying yourself well, but growth is expensive.
Yep.
You're going to self-fund that out of your business. You have to be just comfortable with, I don't know what things will look like in 2 years. I can have goals for those things, but change is inevitable. There's going to be some bumps along the way. We're going to have to spend a bunch of money on fit out. And is that truly what I want? If I look honestly at the next 3 years of my life, am I okay with a scenario where maybe I don't actually cash flow for those 3 years?
Yeah.
What I really want is that end point where I have those 3 clinics and I'm scaling and all of that. And if that's true, that's great. That's fine. But then commit to it. No, it's not going to be easy along the way, and be comfortable with that. Because I think one of the hardest things for founders, especially when you're in that like, okay, I'm small, but I want to go to medium, or I want to take that next step, is just the emotion that can be tied up in that. You get this idea in your head of what you're going to do and when you're going to hit it. And when inevitably that doesn't happen because your biggest payer starts throwing a wrench in things, or key employees get an amazing offer from somewhere else, or they'll start their own thing, that's going to change. As a founder, are you flexible enough to just say, okay, things changed. This is my reality now. How do I pick up, change strategy, and get where I want to go? Yeah.
It's like flexibility is paramount, especially. I agree. Like when you're growing, it inherently becomes more risky. You're doing that. You need money to grow, right? As you mentioned, growth is expensive. And it's like, I think one thing that we always try and emphasize is like prudent growth. So, you're at one location, you want to get to 3, don't open 2 right away, right? Like, let's scale into this. And I think it's also, to your point, it's being honest, like emotionally as a business owner. Am I willing to take this risk? Do I believe in it? But I always like to say, like, the best laid plans generally do fall apart in this industry. And what I mean by that is what you said, people leave, payers have issues. And so if you spread yourself too thin and try and grow, one little hiccup can actually set you back way, way, way beyond where you were just at that single location. And I think it's like measure twice, cut once, really have that plan. But in that plan, what we like to do is like bake in some problems. We say running an ABA business is like, you should operate under like Murphy's Law. Like what can go wrong is probably going to go wrong at some point in time. And you just hope it doesn't all happen at once. But I think like being both like being honest with yourself, understanding where you're at today and where you want to go, but what you need to get there, baking in some, potholes along the way. I think like is just like an incredibly good advice, especially when I froth at the mouth at opportunity and you want to go full steam ahead into it. And, is that the best thing for my sanity, our company, our culture, et cetera? So I think it's there's both like a math and a science to it.
That's right. There's
our art and a science.
Thing I really want people to hear is if you're in that spot where you're like, okay, I am stretched too thin, but there is opportunity and I don't want to stop, then you have to take honest stock of who you have and who your is, right? There's this natural desire, especially I went to school, I thought I was going to be a social worker.
Yeah.
Folks in like the human services profession, they got into this to do good. And so they are very frequently incredibly empathic and they see people and want those people to have opportunities and change. Sure. That is a good desire. There's room for that. But also, if you're going to triple the size of your company, it's very likely you don't actually today have the people that you need in leadership to do that. You might need a COO who's done this before.
Yeah.
You might be the founder who can't actually scale this thing. You can be involved, but you need a CEO. That might be the case.
Yeah.
To take honest stock of your people and take honest stock of your ability to get those folks where they need to be. You might be an incredible clinical mentor, but that doesn't mean that you can take your ops admin who's been doing a great job with scheduling and managing the front desk and turn them into a COO. Like I see that all the time. Maybe that person can, but if you have big plans, you probably need to go out and find a professional COO who can help you get to those next steps.
Yeah, it's like someone who's done it before, someone who's, gotten burned, done the brain damage. I always, one thing we always kind of say, especially when we're having conversations with customers about growth, we'll talk to them about like, how are we going to capitalize this, make sure you're, well funded and your numbers make sense to actually, grow at this point. But we always are like, what is your superpower, right? What is your superpower at that organization? Because as you're growing, focus on those 1, 2, 3 things that are your bread and butter, and then try and delegate elsewhere. And it's like looking in the mirror and saying, hey, and every owner is different, right? Like people have more clinical focus. Some actually are like very operationally focused as well. And it's like taking inventory of what your skill set is, the people around you, and where do you need to double down on what you're good at, and then find folks that are equally as good at what you're good at, but in a different sort of specialty. Ben, I know we've been talking a lot about your experience as an owner, but we've met after that. And so I'd love to, just learn a little bit more if you can talk about what you're up to today and how your history and your experience as an owner that has scaled and done such amazing things. Like what was the impetus for you to start what you're doing today? And would love just to learn more about Arohana and all the things that you're up to.
For sure. Yeah. So like you said, current venture is Arohana Support Services. The reason that exists is because I felt for a long time that if 18 years ago I had the right support around me to just say, I know the answer to that question, not, hey, for the next 3 months, I'm going to guess at it and try to figure it out. Eventually, in a roundabout way, I'll figure it out. I could have run at things faster. I could have saved a lot of my staff's time. I could have saved a lot of stress. Like things just would have naturally progressed in a different way.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I said it earlier, I thought years ago I was going to be a social worker. Like
Right.
I'm an empathic person. I want to see founder-led organizations thrive. And given the last 18 years, I just feel like I and the team I've built around me are uniquely positioned to say, okay, every business in this space, you have to contract, you have to credential,
Yeah.
to get paid, right? Your claims have to go out, the problems that arise have to get solved. And so we exist. Those are our primary things. We also do quality assurance, schedule, other support services. But primary work we do is contracting, credentialing, and billing. And our goal is to just take that pain off of owners' plates so that they can do these things that might be building that team around them, or identifying that next leader, identifying that next location, right? The real work, not the administrative burden that we all bear. We want to take that off of folks' plates. And so I've taken my CFO over a bunch of my ventures with me. I've taken my ops director who's helped me launch these businesses.
We've met them. They're great.
They're phenomenal. My project manager, who I call the detail side of my brain. Like, we built a team of folks who not only understand billing, contracting, credentialing, but they actually also understand whether you're pre-startup, pre-revenue, or you're $30 million in on revenue. Like, we understand where you're at in that phase and sort of the unique solutions that you likely need in order to keep going. Yeah.
We love that. And that's why this relationship's been so great. We just share a very similar customer base. And we kind of alluded to it before, where there's enough folks out there that kind of specialize in their little piece of the puzzle here. And it's really been cool to see in the last 2-3 years as being in this seat at Flychain, how willing all partners are to work with one another too. Because it really does feel like we're establishing, it takes a village to run one of these, and we're all just our respective huts around the business itself. So
and that's been fun for me too, right? Like, at this stage now, I don't feel like with Arohana, I've built a new island, because there are other services like Flychain, all of these great technology systems. We are all able to support each other in supporting our clients, which are the founders and owners.
Yeah, totally. I think it's been also cool, like we alluded to back in the day of options, right? You kind of had one option historically, and now with a lot of new other options for you, you can kind of tailor your business to meet you where you are. And I think that's been really cool to see, whether you're a startup, mid-stage, growth stage, what have you. There is a lid for every pot. But yeah, Ben, well, thank you so much for joining this. It was a lot of fun. We'll do another one for sure. You're just a wealth of knowledge, but how can listeners find you? And I think that would be a great little plug here for you at the end. I know you focus on that kind of same small to medium size ABA therapy business, but how can people find you, reach out to you? Because you do great by all of our shared customers.
Yeah. They can find us at arohanasupportservices.com. That's an easy way to just see what we're up to. You can reach out to us through there. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm active. I'll accept your request. We can have a conversation. I'm always happy just to hop on. And even if you're not going to use our services, just chat about what you're trying to accomplish and give you some time.
Like a free consultation to a certain extent.
Yep.
Awesome, Ben. Well, again, so grateful for your time. Really appreciate you sharing a little bit more about your story. We'll do this again for sure. And with that, I'll let you go, man. Have a good holiday season.
Yeah, good to see you.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Flychain Reaction. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, feel free to contact us at info@flychain.us or schedule a demo through our website at www.flychain.us. See you next time!